Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm going to go over how I get my images to look their absolute best on Instagram. This is a question that I get asked a lot, so I wanted to go ahead and finally make this video so that you guys can make your images look their best for Instagram. Two things that I briefly wanted to go over are the settings that you use for the shot that you're going to be sharing on Instagram and the lens that you used. I wanted to go over these two things specifically because in the past, when people have asked me this question about how to make the images look good on Instagram, I've seen a little bit of motion blur be the reason why that shot doesn't look so good, or an older lens that's not known for its sharpness being used. And those two factors, before you even share a shot on Instagram, are gonna overall affect how that shot's gonna look like on Instagram. If you're using a slow shutter speed that's causing a little bit of motion blur in your shot, maybe at the next shoot use a little bit faster of a shutter speed. I know for a fact that I have shaky hands and I will tend to use a little bit higher of an ISO so that I can use a little bit faster of a shutter speed to avoid any sort of motion blur. And in regards to the lens, you want to make sure that you understand how your lens is going to perform its best. I know for a fact with my Sony 51.8, at 1.8 it's not going to be its sharpest and I need to stop down to 2.2 to maybe even 2.8. Alright, so now that you guys know about those two things that I think are really important to know, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know how I go ahead and get my images to look their best, starting with Lightroom. Alright, so the very first thing that I do, and it might not be a big surprise, but it's add a little bit of sharpening. So over here in the detail section on Lightroom, you can go ahead and see exactly how the sharpness is going to be affected. I tend to always click 1:1 to see the exact full resolution of the image, full screen. And right now I see that it says the amount is at 40. I don't really adjust the radius or the detail. And I know there's a lot of people out there that use masking, but I don't, for the reason that when I've tried to use masking, I felt like the sharpness is drifting away in terms of areas that I want it to be in. So for example, if I go ahead and add a bit of sharpening, which I don't really go past 80, but I'm gonna go ahead and go to 80, and it's definitely a lot sharper now. When I go ahead and add masking to this shot, it goes ahead and removes some of the detail, and it actually looks a little bit weird. It feels like there's a little bit of noise reduction being done to the image, and it's not doing a great job in retaining the detail. So I don't really like to use the masking personally. I tend to just leave the entire image sharpened. I know that's something that there's differing opinions on there, but that's personally what I do. The amount of sharpening that you're gonna do is gonna be highly dependent on the resolution of your image. I'm using the Sony a7R III for this shot, and 80 is gonna be just exactly where I want it to be. But if I used a smaller resolution image, then that might be too much. So kind of, determine how much sharpening that you can do with your image. Typically, the smaller the image is going to be, the less sharpening that you're going to need to do. Now, aside from doing that little bit of sharpening, I don't really do much else to the image to make it a sharper image. I might do other basic adjustments, but that's not going to affect the sharpness. So after I apply that bit of sharpening and I do my basic adjustments, then I'll export the image to my desktop. So I do have the settings here that you guys can check out. I want to make sure that it's a JPEG. Sometimes you can export this image directly into Photoshop as a PSD or TIFF file. I just go ahead and have an old workflow where I export the image as JPEG from Lightroom and then open that JPEG in Photoshop. But you guys can do whatever you want. It is going to be a little bit of a quality difference, but in terms of what I've done for years now, the JPEG is totally fine. So that's what I would recommend, but you guys can go ahead and use those PSD or the TIFF files and go in directly into Photoshop. I don't want to resize the image at all, so I have the resize to fit completely unchecked. The resolution, it honestly doesn't matter for web, but you can go ahead and just change it to 300, which is probably the best, I think, for printing, just so in case you guys want to print those photos. I also do have sharpen for screen and the amount at standard, but honestly, the image is pretty sharp, so I think I'm gonna stop doing this. I don't really think it does much, so I might as well just go ahead and untick that box and keep the sharpening at the level that I had it at, which you guys saw earlier. So before I continue, I did want to let you guys know that everything that I've talked about so far and everything that I'm going to talk about later on in this video is what I've experienced to be the absolute best settings. I know there's a lot of different other settings out there that Instagram itself might say works better. For example, using 1080 as the longest edge, or using 1350 for portraits. But everything that I've gone over, that I'm going to go over in this video, is what I've tried myself. I did a lot of trial and error over the years, and when I finally found out what works best for me, I stuck with it, and that's why I wanted to go ahead and share this video with you guys. Doing all that research over the years really did suck, and it made me wish that I had a resource available to me to learn more about, Facebook and Instagram sizes and video editing when I make videos for YouTube, or photo editing and taking photos in general. And that actually leads me to today's sponsor, which is a great resource I highly recommend, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers memberships with meaning. With so much to explore, real projects to create, and the support of fellow creatives, Skillshare empowers you to accomplish real growth. You definitely want to make 2020 a year where you explore new skills, deepen those existing passions, and pretty much just get lost in creativity with the help of Skillshare's online classes. And who knows, what you find just might surprise and inspire you. You can also learn so much on Skillshare. They have a lot of different sections that you can check out, including film and video for anybody that might be interested in making YouTube videos yourself. They have graphic design, which is something that I actually wanted to do before photography. And they actually have, of course, photography in case you guys want to know more about certain skills regarding that field. For me specifically, I've been looking into the productivity section because I feel that's something that I could really improve on. I feel like I have bad habits that I need to improve on so I can make more videos more efficiently and more frequently for you guys. So that's something that I really am interested in getting better at. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. It's a lot less expensive than something like a workshop or an in-person class, with an annual subscription costing less than $10 a month. And actually, the first 500 people to use my link in the description area below will get 2 free months of premium membership so you guys can explore your creativity. I've been using Skillshare for a while now, and I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Again, use my link in the description area below, and the first 500 people to use that link will get those 2 free months of premium membership. Okay, so now that we have our photo in Photoshop, let me go ahead and continue. The very first thing I do is I apply a little bit of sharpening. I already did my edit in this photo, in terms of frequency separation and dodge and burn and color grading. So I just wanted to let you guys know in case you guys see the image and you're like, well, it looks a little bit different. Well, that's because I edited it already, but that didn't affect the sharpness. That's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna hit Control J. It's gonna make a copy of the layer. You're basically making a duplicate of the photo because of the sharpening that you're about to apply, which is what I do, which is the high pass filter method. You're gonna go to filter, make sure that you have the right layer clicked. If you wanna make sure it's the top layer, go to filter, go to other, and go to high pass. And this, I'm actually gonna zoom in at 100% because I wanna see all the detail that I'm gonna be adding to the image. So I believe I'm on her face right now. Yeah, I'm on her face right now. And you're basically seeing like a gray image with detail coming through. You want to adjust the radius right here to be at a pixel number where you're seeing the detail come through but not too much. So an example of good enough detail would be right here where it's radius of 1. You're seeing a lot of gray and you're barely seeing the edges of all the detail coming through. You want to avoid something like this, for example. That's too much detail, and once you apply that, it's going to be too detailed and just look very gross. So you're destroying the image basically by over sharpening. So I'm going to go back to 1. This is going to be highly dependent on the file of the size of the file that you're going to be working with. For me, this is a 42 megapixel file with the A7R3. If you're using a smaller image, then you might not need to go as far as 1. You might need to do a little bit less than that. I know whenever I edit the photo or where I apply a little bit of sharpening, when I'm working with the Instagram sized image, it's around 0.3 where I add it. And I'll show you guys that in a bit. So for now, I'm gonna leave it at pixel 1, click OK, and then I'm gonna change the blending mode right here from normal to vivid light. And right now, I'm gonna toggle the effect off and on, the layer off and on. And you guys can see this is before and this is after. I feel like it's a little too sharp. So the reason why I do this method is because I can adjust the sharpness afterwards. I can change the opacity from 100 to something lower where it kind of sharpens the image, but not too much. So I did this earlier and I think 40 was a good enough level. So I'm gonna go ahead and toggle it off and toggle it back on. You guys can check out the hair here or the eyelashes, and you can see how much sharper it is after I apply the sharpening. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom back out. I'm gonna go ahead and merge the photo. I already have it cropped for Instagram, which is 4:5, but if you don't, then go ahead and hit C and then change it to be 4:5 here, and then get your crop how you want it to be. And since I already have that, I'm gonna go ahead and skip to the next thing, which is resizing. And this is where a lot of controversy comes into play because of different resources out there that say different things. And I've seen those resources all over the internet that say you want to upload as a PNG at 1350, on the longest edge for portrait orientation. And I've seen that, I've tried it, and I've seen that it doesn't work. What I've tried actually today while making this video, before making this video, I tried different things in terms of changing it to PNG or JPEG and changing it to different file sizes, which is 2048 pixels, which is what I would recommend, 1350 pixels on the longest edge, and also 1080 pixels on the longest edge. And what I found was that uploading the photo to Instagram at 2048 pixels was the best of those three. And I'll go ahead and show you guys screenshots that I took of me zooming into that photo and trying to get the best exact framing and show you guys the quality of those different types of images. The reason why I wanted to go ahead and bring this up is because a lot of times people have commented that before, saying, well, Instagram only allows you to upload at 1350 pixels long. Why are you uploading it at 2048 pixels? Well, it's a little bit of two things. One, I found it to be sharper on Instagram, uploading at 2048 pixels. And also I share a lot on, not Instagram, but also Facebook. And Facebook, uploading at 2048 pixels is going to be a good file size for it to look its best on there as well. So it's a bit of not just making it look good for Instagram, but also for Facebook. And I'm glad when I was discovering how to make the images look its best on Facebook, I discovered that using that same size works better on Instagram than something like the recommended, which is 1350 pixels on the longest edge. But now let's continue going forward and change the file or the size of the file. Up here, image size, or you can use the shortcut that's going to show up right there. And again, you're just changing the file height to 2048 pixels long. And I'm actually going to go into 100% and check out the quality of the image in terms of sharpness right now. And it honestly looks really good to me. But sometimes, even after resizing, I'll go ahead and add a little bit extra sharpness. And I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. It's going to be just a little bit, but I want to show you guys the process in case your image doesn't look as sharp and you want it to be a little bit sharper. So it's going to be the exact same process as before, hitting Control or Command J, making a copy of that layer, and changing the filter to high pass. So I'm going to go ahead and click high pass here. And right now what I'm seeing is a little bit too much detail. Like I mentioned before, if you have a smaller image, then maybe something that worked earlier, which was a pixel radius of 1, is not going to work. Right now it feels like it's too much. So I'm going to change it to 0.3. And again, I'm barely seeing that detail come through, and that's exactly where I want it to be. I want to avoid something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and change it back to 0.3. Click OK. Change the blending mode to vivid light. And I feel like it's a little too sharp here, so I'm going to toggle it off and then toggle it back on. Toggle it off, toggle it back on. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust it to maybe 40. And I feel like 40 is a little too small, so I'm going to go to 50%. And I feel like 50, if you pay attention to like the hairs on top of her head and the hairs over here, the strands of hair, you can see that they start to become a little bit sharper. And again, this is something that I'm barely adding a little bit more detail to make that image look a little bit sharper, you know, to its best of its ability without being too much. So I'm going to go ahead and now hit Merge Visible. And this is pretty much everything that I would do in terms of making the photo look its best. Like I mentioned before, I've tried exporting it as a JPEG and a PNG, and I found that there's virtually no difference. So I would recommend you guys do a little bit of testing on your own and see what works best for you. If you guys found any other settings to work better for you, let me know in the comment section below, because I'm very interested to see exactly what worked better or not. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.